It suddenly became real. We were going to conspire and commit murder.
I don't know the guy. I never will. I'm angry to see all the hate that runs through other people.
No fear, no guilty tears. Inside the courtroom, remorseless teens expose the darkest side of betrayal, turning against their own kin. From Ryan True stabbing his parents in Massachusetts, to Trevor Lee ending the lives of his own family, justice came down fierce and unyielding. Let's begin.
Ryan said he had, quote unquote, had enough and did what he had to do. And he told his brother that he understands if Hughes III would not forgive him.
A son sitting in court. A jury is watching his every move, and parents who will never walk through the door again. In the quiet town of Middleborough, Massachusetts, tragedy struck a home where neighbors described the family as nothing but kind and caring. But behind closed doors, something far darker was unfolding. In December 2020, a 25-year-old man named Ryan True brutally killed his parents, Renee and David True, inside their own home. The couple, who were well loved in the community, David working for a paving company and Renee driving a school bus for special needs children, were suddenly gone. Their family and neighbors were left searching for answers to a crime they never could have imagined. Officers arrived at the family's Highland Street home after a request for a well-being check. Inside, they made a horrific discovery. Renee, 55, and David, 52, were found dead, covered in blankets. Both had suffered multiple stab wounds. Investigators quickly pieced together evidence and soon focused on their son. Ryan True was arrested after he admitted to stabbing his parents to death. According to prosecutors, Ryan told his half-brother on the phone that something bad had happened, and chillingly added that he was the only one who left the house alive. He claimed he first attacked his father after an argument, then later stabbed his mother when she returned home. Afterward, Ryan fled in his mother's car, leaving behind 2 suitcases, a cell phone, and a folded knife. All key evidence that tied him to the murders. Prosecutors also said that police described it as a brutal and bloody scene. When questioned, Ryan allegedly said he had had enough of his father and snapped, claiming his father had been drinking and they had fought. According to prosecutors, he stated,
He took out his pocket knife to defend himself and cause bodily harm to his father, stabbing his father multiple times.
For his mother, he said she went upstairs to get a gun and he stabbed her as well. It was a shocking and senseless act of conflict against the very people who raised him. Ryan True went to trial in Brockton Superior Court. After hearing the evidence, the jury convicted him of both murders. The judge sentenced him to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, ensuring he will never walk free again. However, he remained stone-faced while the verdict was read. The community was left heartbroken. David's co-workers described him as one of the best men we've had the privilege of knowing. Renee's neighbors remembered her as a warm, loving woman who dedicated her time to helping children with special needs. No one could understand how their own son could destroy such a loving family. A son destroyed his own family in a single night. But our next case takes betrayal to the next level, where a young woman would twist hidden secrets into a deadly game with her boyfriend.
This idea flopped into my lap. I'll tell the police I did.
A wealthy Virginia family, a young daughter, a secret romance. By the next morning, 2 parents were dead, and Elizabeth Haysom's life would be ruined forever. Elizabeth Roxanne Haysom was born in April 1964 to Nancy and Derek Haysom, a respected artist and a steel executive. Elizabeth grew up attending boarding schools in Switzerland and England, eventually enrolling at the University of Virginia. It was there that she met Jens Soring, an 18-year-old who quickly became her boyfriend. Little did anyone know, this seemingly ordinary couple would soon be at the center of one of Virginia's most shocking crimes. On the morning of April 3, 1985, Derek and Nancy Haysom were discovered dreadfully killed in their Bedford County home. Both had been slashed and stabbed, nearly decapitated, leaving a scene of unimaginable horror. The bodies were not found until days later. Elizabeth, the daughter, suddenly became the organizer of her parents' funerals, a role no one questioned at the time. But behind the scenes, a darker story was beginning to unfold. Authorities soon discovered that Elizabeth had rented a car on the day of the murders. The mileage recorded far exceeded the trip she claimed to have made to Washington, D.C. to establish an alibi with Jens. Suspicion quickly fell on the young couple, who then fled the country. 6 months later, they were arrested in England. The courtroom was silent. every eye fixed on the young couple as the prosecution laid out the chilling details. Then came a shocking twist. Jens, usually quiet and reserved, stood before the court and took a deep breath. "I did it," he said, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "Elizabeth had nothing to do with this. It was all me." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The defense and prosecution alike struggled to process the confession. Jens was trying to shield Elizabeth, to carry the weight of their crimes alone. But the evidence told a different story. The mileage, the flight records, the planning. It all pointed to them acting together. Jens' attempt to take the fall seemed noble in intent, but the truth was undeniable. Both had played roles in the murders. At one point, Jens confesses. He said,
"I had to protect her, okay? I could not turn her in."
The jury listened intently, torn between his apparent remorse and the damning facts laid bare before them. In 1987, Elizabeth Haysom, then 23, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of accessory to murder before the fact. She was sentenced to 90 years in prison, 45 years for each parent, to be served consecutively. Jens Soring maintained his innocence but was later convicted in 1990 of first-degree murder and sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms. However, both of them showed no remorse for the actions they did. During prison interviews decades later, Elizabeth claimed Jens had killed her parents in a rage after learning about alleged mistreatment from her mother. She expressed profound shame for her role, admitting her complicity while criticizing Jens for holding on to his innocence. Dynamics between Elizabeth, Jens, and her parents, with money, fear, and dark secrets playing central roles. The case revealed how betrayal and manipulation could destroy a family from within. After more than 30 years behind bars, both Elizabeth and Jens were granted parole and deported to their respective home countries in 2019 and 2020. Elizabeth returned to Canada, while Jens went back to Germany. While they were free, they were never pardoned, and the shadow of their crimes continues to loom over the lives they shattered. A family torn apart, a daughter's betrayal, and a young man convicted of unimaginable atrocity. The Haysom murders remind us how appearances can deceive, and how darkness can hide behind even the most privileged lives. A young couple's twisted romance ended in murder. Our next case shows how a teenage boy would show how darkness can fester in the quietest of homes and explode at school.
Trying to get pistols. He had 2 pistols in his belt. And the other kid that was with me, when we tackled him, he got shot.
A quiet home, a troubled teen, a family dinner. By the next morning, 2 parents were dead, and a teen's life and a school would be changed forever. On May 21, 1998, Springfield, Oregon was shaken to its core. Kip Kinkle, a 15-year-old freshman, walked into the cafeteria of Thurston High School carrying a semi-automatic weapon. Within minutes, 2 students were dead and 25 others were wounded. But this terrifying attack didn't start at school. It began at home. The day before the shooting, May 19, 1998, started like any other in the Kinkle home in Springfield, Oregon. William and Faith Kinkle, devoted Spanish teachers, went about their morning unaware of the horror about to unfold. Their son, Kip, troubled and obsessed with guns, had made a dark decision. That morning, he shot his father in the head, then turned on his mother, killing her too. The once safe home became a scene of cold, calculated conflict. Afterward, Kip took money and weapons, a grim prelude to the tragedy he would unleash at Thurston High School the next day. Kip had killed his own parents in their family home. Both William and Faith Kinkle were Spanish teachers, devoted to their children. But behind closed doors, Kip's fascination with weapons, explosives, and death had been growing for years. Despite therapy, Prozac, and anger management, voices in his head drove him to do dreadful acts. He claimed these voices demanded that he kill, and he had no other choice. When police arrived at Thurston High, chaos had erupted. Students were running, hiding, and trying to survive, but a group of courageous students tackled Kip when he tried to reload, stopping him from causing even more devastation. Authorities quickly took him into custody. The full horror of Kip's plan emerged. He had entered the school fully armed, carrying rifles, pistols, hunting knives, and over 1,000 rounds of ammunition. His rampage was methodical, his targets indiscriminate. 2 teenagers were killed, 16-year-old Ben Walker and 17-year-old Mikhail Nicolason, and dozens more were left fighting for their lives. In a note left behind, Kip tried to explain his actions. He blamed the embarrassment of his recent suspension and the voices in his head, describing a torment he could no longer control. He claimed he had wanted to end his life, and that killing his parents and opening fire at school was part of a desperate, twisted plan. Kipling Kinkle pleaded guilty to murder and attempted murder, avoiding a trial by insanity. In November 1999, he was sentenced to 111 years in prison without the possibility of parole. He remains incarcerated today, diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and under strict supervision. The tragedy left a lasting scar on Springfield, remembered in memorials and scholarships for the victims, and forever changed the community. This was a story of a boy consumed by his own mind, a family destroyed, and a school forever haunted. Courageous students and responders tried to stop him, but the loss and trauma remain. One of them said,
I feel intense anger, but no hatred towards Kipling Kinkle.
a teen's rage claimed multiple lives and left a town scarred forever. But our next case explores that sometimes tragedy strikes even closer to home. A single shot, a mother gone.
Did you cause anything that created your mom's death? I don't think so.
A quiet Michigan home, a teenage son, a family disagreement over a pet. By dawn, one mother was dead. On September 8, 2017, he fatally shot his 51-year-old mother while she slept. He pleaded guilty, but mentally ill, to reduce charges of second-degree murder and was sentenced to at least 17 years in prison. 19-year-old Andrew Wilson had just returned from a late-night drive when he made a call that would shock everyone. He told police he had found his mother, 51-year-old Lisa Marie Wilson, dead in her bedroom. The horror was just beginning to unfold. Authorities rushed to the Lansing area home. When they arrived, they found Lisa lying in her bedroom, shot once in the back of the head. Investigators quickly determined that no one else had been in the house that night. The home, once a place of safety, had become a crime scene. Detectives dug deeper and uncovered chilling details. The night before the murder, Lisa had told her son that a pet he had found would need to go to his father's house in Dansville. Andrew would later admit to investigators that he had taken a gun from a locked cabinet and shot his mother while she slept. The motive was both shocking and woeful. A dispute over a family pet escalated to murder, leaving a family and community in disbelief.
She was found dead inside of her home in Wheatfield Township last September. Police say Andrew Wilson admitted he shot and killed his mom because she wouldn't let him keep a puppy.
More than a year later, Andrew Wilson pleaded guilty but mentally ill to second-degree murder in Ingham County Circuit Court. In exchange for his plea, the first-degree murder charge was dismissed. He was sentenced in November 2018 to a minimum of 17 years in prison. A loving mother's life ended most unimaginably. A son's actions leaving a community in shock. It's a case that reminds us just how fragile life can be and how quickly tragedy can strike. One mother lost, a son behind bars, and a community reeling from grief. Our next case takes horror to another level, where a teenager takes conflict to the most unthinkable extreme.
Accurate charges for someone who's murdered his parents, and first-degree murder is the right charge.
A teenage boy, a family argument, one night of conflict. By morning, both parents were dead. On August 4th, 2025, Trevor Lee was only 14, a teenager from Clay County, Florida. But one tragic night changed everything. His life and the lives of his parents took a shocking turn that left the entire community in disbelief. Trevor Lee is now facing 2 counts of first-degree murder. His parents, 44-year-old David Lee and 45-year-old Brandy Smith, were found dead in their bedroom after being shot multiple times. The weapon, believed to belong to the couple, was recovered in the home. Authorities say the deadly shooting may have followed an argument the night before. Trevor called an emergency. In a nervous voice, he admitted what had happened, asking the dispatcher to pray for him before deputies arrived.
I'll listen to you.
Well, I was going to ask if you could pray for me, ma'am.
Police were able to safely take him into custody at a local church without incident. The arrest report and emergency call were heavily redacted to protect the investigation and any future trial. The scene inside the home was heartbreaking. Multiple shell casings were found in the bedroom where both parents were killed. The tragedy shocked everyone who knew the family, including Trevor's sister, who was serving in the military in California. She pleaded over the phone with the dispatcher, "I don't have anyone else. Please. They had a good day. They went to the movies." Authorities are still investigating the motive, though reports suggest a heated argument may have escalated into conflict. How a teenager could take the lives of his own parents remains a question that haunts the community. In November 2018, Andrew was sentenced to at least 17 years in prison. However, he showed no emotion while the verdict was read. He had pleaded guilty, but mentally ill, to second-degree murder. with his defense citing a major depressive episode and hallucinations at the time. The sentencing took place in Ingham County Circuit Court. A family torn apart, a neighborhood was left in shock, and a young boy whose actions have left a permanent scar on everyone who knew him. Sometimes, tragedy hits closest to home, and nothing will ever be the same. The next case shows how complicity can be as deadly as the crime itself. Natalie Keepers stood by, helping make sure the murder happened.
I was a very lovable person. Nicole touched many people throughout her short life.
She never met the victim. She never held the weapon. Yet the jury still found her just as guilty as the killer because prosecutors said the murder wouldn't have happened without her. On January 27, 2016, 13-year-old Nicole Lovell vanished. The search for her started with hope and ended in horror. The truth exposed betrayal, a disturbing plan, and 2 college students at its center. At the center of it was not only the killer, David Eisenhower, but also his friend, 19-year-old Natalie Keepers, who would later stand trial for helping plan Nicole's death in advance. Nicole Lovell was found dead near the North Carolina border. Investigators soon discovered that her killer was David Eisenhower, a Virginia Tech student who had met Nicole online. But as the case unfolded, they also uncovered messages, surveillance footage, and other chilling evidence revealing that Natalie Keepers, someone Nicole had never even met, was deeply involved in the plot. Prosecutors argued she was far from a bystander, claiming she acted as an accessory before the fact, helping Eisenhower plan each step of the murder. Detectives pieced together a timeline using surveillance photos, GPS data, and text messages. They found a video of Eisenhower and Keepers buying a shovel together. GPS records showed her helping him choose the location where Nicole's body would be hidden. Messages between the two revealed discussions about ways to kill Nicole. Prosecutors said this was more than just talk. It was preparation for a crime. When the case went to trial, the courtroom heard both sides. The prosecution painted Keepers as someone who willingly took part in planning the murder. The defense argued she was simply playing along with Eisenhower's fantasy and never believed he would go through with it. They brought in experts to testify about her mental health, conditions like borderline personality disorder, PTSD, and dependent personality disorder, which could make her easily manipulated. But prosecutors pushed back, saying her actions showed intent, not just influence. According to the defense, Keepers had no reason to want Nicole dead. They claimed her only motive was to stay close to Eisenhower, someone she admired and wanted to please. But prosecutors argued that she knew Nicole was going to die that night and chose to help anyway. After less than 90 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict, guilty of accessory before the fact to first-degree murder.
Words can't express how sorry I am. I never intended for this to happen.
The next day, they recommended her sentence. As the verdict was read, she sat motionless, her face cold, her eyes unblinking, showing not a flicker of emotion. On the other hand, Eisenhower received 50 years in prison. His apology offered little comfort compared to the weight of the sentence. The case closed with the community knowing Nicole's life had been stolen, not just by one person, but with the help of another who could have stopped it. For Nicole's family, the verdict brought some justice, but no verdict could bring their daughter back. Her mother said, "She was everything to me." One murder, planned with chilling precision and showing zero regret. Our next case investigates a jealousy so intense, it ends in a deadly rivalry.
Yeah, because I know they're going to jump me. I know Josh's family. Josh has hit me before. Josh's brother has hit me before.
2 young women, one toxic love triangle, and a jealousy so intense it left one of them lying lifeless in the street. In court, the jury would hear angry voicemails, chilling threats, and details of the final confrontation that turned a rivalry into murder. Rachel Wade and Sarah Ludman weren't strangers. They were competing for the same man, Wade's ex-boyfriend, Josh Camacho. From the start, it was toxic. Public arguments, angry phone calls, and social media jabs turned their feud into a deadly battle. Wade left hurtful voicemails. Ludman showed up at Wade's workplace to taunt her, and police were called more than once. Instead of walking away, both women kept fueling the fire, and it was only a matter of time before it boiled over. On the night of April 14, 2009, tensions reached their breaking point. Wade armed herself with a steak knife before heading out. Hours later, Sarah Ludman drove to confront her rival. What happened next depends on who you believe. Wade said she was attacked first. Witnesses said Wade approached and struck without warning. What's certain is that Ludman was stabbed twice, one blow piercing her heart. She managed to call Camacho before collapsing. Police quickly arrived, spoke to witnesses, and learned of the long history of threats. Wade was taken into custody before sunrise. In court, the prosecution played voicemails, recorded months before the stabbing, in which Wade threatened to kill Ludman. Witnesses testified that Wade had approached Sarah's car and delivered the fatal blows. The defense argued self-defense under Florida's Stand Your Ground law, claiming Wade feared for her safety, but the jury wasn't convinced. At its core, this was a jealousy-fueled confrontation.
I was upset. I was getting harassing phone calls, just like she would tell me she was gonna kick. I just retaliated and I said things. I said it out of anger.
Driven by months of bitterness over the same boyfriend, prosecutors said Wade's words and actions showed she had been planning to harm her rival long before that night. It took the jury just 2.5 hours to find Rachel Wade guilty of second-degree murder. In September 2010, she was sentenced to 27 years in state prison. She insisted she wasn't the monster everyone saw her as, yet her cold, unflinching eyes told a different story.
I'm so sorry to be the one who has caused you this great fate. I need you to know, please, that I too was just a teenage girl, not a monster and a murderer as it may seem.
For Sarah Ludman's family, the loss was devastating. A young life cut short over a relationship that, in time, might have been forgotten.
Your Honor, thank you for your time. Remember, this is my daughter. She lays in a cemetery. I go visit her there. Rachel Wade's parents can come and see her.
For Wade, the rivalry that consumed her ended with decades behind bars. Jealousy claimed one life. Anger stole another. But the next case shows a teenager armed, ruthless, and ready to take a cop's life without hesitation.
But not only did they rob him in his car, but they shot him with the revolver that they had.
On New Year's Eve 2021, off-duty Cleveland police officer Shane Bartek never made it to his celebration. Within minutes of stepping outside his apartment, he was confronted, robbed, and shot by his killer, who sped away in his car. The person behind the trigger, an 18-year-old, is already on a violent crime spree. When the jury finally heard the evidence, they didn't just see a teenager. They saw a cold-blooded killer who would never walk free again. This was not a mistake. This was murder. The girl was 18-year-old Tamara McLeod, just a teenager but already dangerous. In the weeks leading up to that night, Tamara had been involved in several armed robberies with 2 accomplices. On this night, she was armed with a revolver and ready to strike again. Outside Shane's apartment, she approached him, demanding his car. But Shane, a trained officer, wasn't willing to give up without a fight. According to investigators, Shane lunged for the weapon. In that split second, a shot rang out, hitting him. Tamara then took off in his car. Police arrived quickly, and the investigation moved fast, linking her not only to Shane's killing, but also to 4 other robberies in the preceding weeks. Detectives brought her in for questioning, where she admitted to shooting Shane and stealing his car, though she insisted it had been an accident.
I never drove this monster. Listen, one time though,
The courtroom would later hear a very different story from prosecutors. They said the evidence proved Tamara deliberately fired during the robbery, making this far more than just a tragic mistake. The jury saw it. Surveillance footage, witness accounts, and forensic details all worked against her. Her motive, investigators concluded, was simple. She wanted the car and was willing to use deadly force to get it. It wasn't desperation. It was a choice. The weeks of robberies leading up to that night painted a clear picture of someone spiraling deeper into violent crime. In the end, the jury found her guilty of aggravated murder, felonious assault, aggravated robbery, and weapons offenses. The sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. However, she showed no emotion for her actions. An appeals court later upheld that decision. She will never walk free again. For Shane Bartek's loved ones, the ruling brought some measure of justice. But no sentence could ever replace the young officer whose life was taken far too soon. Her mother said,
"I couldn't hold my baby. I couldn't wipe away the blood on his face."
Another life stolen, another courtroom stunned. But our next case takes obsession to a horrifying new level, where a young woman turns her anger into deadly consequences for her father.
I don't know. I think it kind of made me feel like everyone was trying to make me think like I was crazy or something.
The courtroom was packed, and the story was shocking beyond words. The defendant was a young woman who once referred to her father as her best friend. She caused his slow, painful death, all because he couldn't drive her to a hair appointment before her 18th birthday. It was 2021, the day before Megan Amirowicz's 18th birthday party. She had plans, big ones. The first stop, her hair appointment. But her father, 64-year-old Konrad Amirowicz, had been drinking. He wasn't in any condition to get behind the wheel. What happened next, prosecutors argued, was fueled by pure frustration. According to investigators, while Konrad was asleep, Megan grabbed a container of lye, commonly used in drain cleaners, and poured it over him. The reaction was immediate. The chemical burned through his skin, leaving devastating injuries from head to toe. Konrad's fight to survive was nothing short of brutal. He needed kidney dialysis, a tracheotomy to help him breathe, and eventually, both of his legs were amputated. For 5 months, doctors tried everything, but his body could not recover. When he died, police built a timeline, one that pointed directly to Megan. She was arrested and charged. The trial pulled back the curtain on the horror. Jurors heard in detail how the burns destroyed Konrad's skin, how his body shut down, one organ at a time, how every surgery, every treatment was a desperate attempt to keep him alive. Prosecutors said the motive was heartbreakingly simple: anger. Anger that her plans had been ruined. Her friend said in court that her father's drinking had gotten in the way. One moment of rage, with consequences no one could undo.
Given that Konrad was laying on the couch, it was close to Konrad, is that right?
That is correct.
Could you tell what it was from where you were?
I could tell that it was liquid.
In 2023, Megan was found guilty of using harmful devices or irritants causing death. The sentencing guidelines called for over 4 years in prison, but the judge, citing her youth, immaturity, and the chance for rehabilitation, sentenced her to just 1 year in jail because she had already spent about 17 months in custody before trial, and she walked free immediately. Prosecutors were outraged, but the Michigan Court of Appeals upheld the decision, saying it was not a mistreatment of discretion. Plans ruined, lives destroyed, but the consequences don't end there. Our next case shows one night of bad decisions, leaving a community mourning, and a teenager standing stone-faced in court.
Murder deserves no leniency, Your Honor. Age is not an excuse. Gender is not a shield.
The Clark County courtroom was packed as the case unfolded. On January 2, 2024, 29-year-old Darian Gonzalez was shot and killed in his apartment during what investigators would call a robbery gone wrong. The young defendant would soon face the judge, the truth of their actions laid bare, and the consequences that could not be undone. Authorities quickly identified 6 people involved in the crime. Among them were 3 young individuals: 18-year-old Precious Dennis, 15-year-old Daisy Gonzalez, and 20-year-old Javier Galvin. Their connection to the shooting was complicated, and tensions rose as investigators pieced together what had happened. Police reports revealed that the group had been at Darian's apartment under the guise of recording music. While there, they used harmful substances and drank alcohol. During this time, some displayed weapons. Messages later revealed they planned to take Darian's rifle. 2 individuals fired shots during the robbery. Daisy claimed she was in the bathroom, while Dennis sent messages to cover up what had happened. The shooting itself was chaotic. Darian fought to protect himself, but in a matter of moments, 2 of the group's members opened fire. Lives were changed forever. The motive was primarily financial, a robbery gone wrong. The group had targeted Darian's firearm and some clothing. Their actions led to irreversible consequences. In court, the 3 young defendants took plea deals. On sentencing day, Judge Carly Kearney handed down probation instead of prison. Dennis and Daisy Gonzalez received 5 years probation, with requirements to earn a GED or high school diploma.
To probation, to share at no contact with co-defendants, no alcohol or drugs, and you are to extend a GED or high school diploma.
However, She remained stone-faced while the verdict was read. Javier Galvin received 2 years probation and was ordered to have no contact with his brother. The judge warned him, "Good luck to all of you. You will not get a second chance." The choices of these teen killers shattered families forever, and the chilling courtroom moments exposed the unimaginable reality of their actions.